Pretty good. Yourself?
Awesome. So everybody, this is Carlos Corrales. As I was saying, he's a good friend of mine. He's a lawyer here in Costa Rica. He does not only intellectual property stuff, so protecting your brand and everything like that, but also just general business stuff. Carlos has helped us with product registration, business registration stuff, you name it. So anybody who's joining us on the Facebook Live, feel free to type your questions down below. And Carlos is going to answer all your questions. Right, Carlos?
You are my guest. Bring it on. Very happy to be here. Very glad to be here. And in part of this, not experiment, this podcast, I think it's going to be worth it for everybody.
I love it, man. So tell me, for somebody who's never run a business here in Costa Rica, so say, okay, we're imagining the average person, they're just an American, they're moving down to Costa Rica. They want to run a business, right? Say they want to open a restaurant. All right, this is a common one, or have a rental home here in Costa Rica. So they want to open a restaurant. They want to live at the beach. They want to live the dream, have a bar and restaurant, right? It's super easy. How hard could it be, Carlos? I show up and the money starts flowing, right?
That's right. Well, it couldn't be simpler, right?
It couldn't be easier.
It couldn't be easier. But the secret, my friend here, is be well advised.
Yeah.
The first thing you have to do is to find a lawyer, an attorney. I mean, you can have friends and they can tell you their experience and how easy or how difficult it was. But bottom line, at the end, the common denominator was they were not well advised, right?
Yep.
And first of all, is getting a good lawyer. In Costa Rica, there are plenty of good lawyers, but as well, and that's something that people have to be very careful, is that there are other very bad lawyers, you know? So you have to be very careful on that decision making, right?
Yep.
There are many directories, there are many other websites, but perhaps more important is ask your friends or people that you know who are their attorneys, so they can recommend you a good attorney. Number one, right? Number one. After choosing a very good attorney, it could be me or any other colleague, because they are good colleagues out there in San Jose or all parts of Costa Rica, is started to make the right questions. What are you planning to do in Costa Rica? Are you planning visiting? Are you planning to stay? Are you planning to live the dream and establish in Costa Rica and make it happen, right?
What if my dream involves no lawyers, man? Good luck. I tell people, look, if you want to buy a car, right? If you want to have the most simple of things, you absolutely need a lawyer. You cannot do stuff like that without a lawyer. You just can't. Like I've had people, like I've talked to people. They're like, oh no, the people I bought it from, they had a lawyer, they got it done. It's like, well, if that happened and you got the car in good shape, you're lucky, because that is not the way it works here. Like it's not the same as the States, where you go to the used car dealer and you just sign the piece of paper and you get it. It's done. I mean, people imagine that that's the truth, but it's not the truth. And I try to tell people that it's not the truth. Always, no matter what you're doing, always have your own lawyer. Always. It's just common sense here in Costa Rica. For Costa Rica, it's just common sense.
That's right. Well, I remember when I lived in the United States, almost 20 years ago, I need to lease an apartment, buy a car, I need to move around. And I was very surprised how easy it is to buy a car. I don't remember. I went to the city hall, signed a simple paper, and the car was mine.
Yeah. I bought cars in Florida and stuff when I lived in Florida. You didn't even need to do anything. They signed on the piece of paper that was sitting in the car, and that was it. I was like, what is this? After I experienced in Costa Rica, it's just not the same. Right?
And most impressive for me was that the plates are yours in the United States, right? I mean, you can take them off and put them on again in another car, and the plates are yours. And let me tell you an experience. When I was there, I chose a name for my plate. It was Tico, T-I-C-O. right?
Oh, wow.
So
that's a valuable one, man.
yes,
Nice.
so I got it here, and it's from New Hampshire, and the motto says "Live free or die."
Yeah.
But well,
Pura
that's
vida.
another story. In Costa Rica, buying a car, you need an attorney.
Yep.
You are going to buy a house, you need an attorney. And
Yep.
perhaps to be more specific, what you need is a notary public. In Costa Rica, both attorneys and notary, I mean, almost all attorneys are notary publics, okay? Which is a different figure in the United States. So it's very different, right? In Costa Rica, it's a civil law based, very different from the Anglo-Saxon system. So there, of course, there are very different ways of applying the law. So in that sense, we follow more the French system, and that's why everything is needed to be written. Everything needs to be like more formal, you know,
Right.
like subscribing
In a book,
deed.
in like a big book.
In a big notebook, which is the official notebook of the notary publics. That's right.
It's so funny. Until you see this thing, you're like, can this be real? Is this real? And yet it is. There it is.
Yeah,
It's the big book, man.
That's right. It's a very solemn book, right? It's like a Bible. It's like a Bible. And nothing can happen to that book, right? That notebook. Why? Because we sign the deed, you're buying the car, a house, or whatever other kind of business you're doing, you have to sign between the parties that contract, and the notary public has to sign it. And then he transcribes that deed into another document, which is going to be filed in the National Registry of Costa Rica, right? In this place, which is ascribed to the Secretary of Justice, or the Ministerio de Justicia here in Costa Rica, that document is recorded, right? Registry. Why? Because then it is a public registry, and third parties can know who owns that car, right? That information is public, okay? Right. So and it's and that's good.
It's a decent system in theory.
It's very decent.
Decent. The issues people can run into, though, I think that maybe you can explain a little bit in detail, are when you get a shady actor, when you get a notary who is doing underhanded deeds. And this is when I think people need to be careful with any lawyer you have. You need to have kind of control. Maybe you can explain it too, about like the books and the control of the books and the shares and that sort of thing. Where I'll give you a perfect example I was actually speaking with somebody on my podcast a couple weeks ago. And they were describing to me how a friend of theirs had basically the person had set up a corporation to hold the person's property as well as hold the bank accounts, right, for this person. Because when we can get into this a little bit later too, but they didn't have residency, so in order to have bank accounts, a simple way to do that is through an SAR, through a corporation, right? So this person had their bank accounts and their property in this corporation. Well, they had left the books with a notary, and this notary had backhandedly basically stolen the property, the bank accounts, from this person. And as the person is explaining this to me, I'm doing the interview. Carlos, I had the most visceral reaction of, oh my God, because last time we transferred our property, I had left the books with our attorney. And not that I don't trust him, and not that he's a good attorney, but I had left my books with him, and it had been like a year. And I had just this visceral reaction of, oh my God, you stupid idiot. What are you doing? I need to get those books back right away. And like, that was a Sunday. I waited till the next, and I got my books back, and it was no problem. The guy's a good lawyer. He's a good lawyer, you know, but I was not taking responsibility for my own stuff. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, dude, you have to take control of your own stuff here. So if you can walk us through how that could happen to somebody, and what are kind of the pitfalls or something to avoid when setting up an SAR, and the best way to do it to maintain that kind of security for an individual. So say they're setting up a corporation to hold a business and you know, their bank accounts. What's the way they want to do that to control it all so they can feel comfortable that they're not going to get ripped off?
No, I understand. And for me, it would be the same problem if I were you, for example, right? Definitely, that's I come back again to the first point that I said at the beginning. You need to have a very trustful attorney, right? That's an
My
imperative.
rule number one: trust but verify.
That's right. Because
in any
whatever
business, I mean, that's the way it is. Trust but verify, right?
yeah, verify, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you want a second opinion, you can do so, right? You are in the right to protect your property. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, you have to take care of your own things. If you want to ask a second attorney or a third attorney, you can do that, right? Or even your friends, because you're starting to make friends here in Costa Rica, you can ask them as well, right? Because I remember my great aunt that lives in Miami had a carpenter, right, in Florida. And very sadly, he came to Costa Rica with his earnings of all his life. He made a corporation with an attorney, perfectly well. The corporation existed. But thereafter, he bought a property. But the property was not made in the protocolo, the famous solemn book of the Notary Republics, right? It was made in plain paper, right? Oh. And he, unfortunately, very sadly, he lost $50,000, right? So, yes, you have to verify. You have to trust your lawyer, and you have to verify that everything is correct. I mean, see the papers, that they are official, and so on, right? Yeah. That's very important. That's very important. But nevertheless, let's try to move along. You're planning to live in the dream here in Costa Rica. You already found a very good attorney, and I see that there are colleagues watching this video at this moment. So please, I would like to say hello to them at this moment. Now that you found your attorney, the first thing you have to do is incorporate a corporation. Mm-hmm. Why? Because you're planning to make a business. Even if you're retiring in Costa Rica and you're having property here in Costa Rica, the best way to do it is to make it within a corporation. Right. For many reasons, even if it's for a business, even if it's for your personal use, eventually, if you pass away or whatever, it's easier to control your property here with a corporation, right? Right. And if it's for business purposes, for obvious reasons, of course. Making a corporation in Costa Rica, it's easy. Again, right now, one of the best things our system right now has is that in 24 hours, you can incorporate a company in Costa Rica, right? Right. Within 24 hours, you got your company, and you're ready to start, right? Yeah. After having your corporation incorporated, there are many other things that will start flowing. I mean, one of the first things is to open a bank account, of course. A bank account. Although the bank account is easy to open, the banks are requiring many information, right? Oh, yeah. They want to know their client. They want to know where are you establishing, if you're having a local establishment, if you got a public services under the name of the company, and so on. To open a bank account is kind of not difficult, but it's very bureaucratic. Right.
It's not easy. I mean, just from personal experience, the bank accounts are not easy, and you will have to prove every couple of years who you are, where the money's coming from. They will ask you. You will be required to provide information from your accountants and all the rest of it. I've talked about that a little before. It can be challenging and expensive. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the things people need to understand. If they're coming here and they're going to, even just having a small business or whatever, your legal fees, you have to plan that, because it can be very expensive to do these things. Like know your customers. I told this story just recently. We had the know your customer thing pop up from Banco Nacional, which happens about every 2 years, and which requires, the accountant to do the whole letter, the legal paper from the lawyer saying the business is blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. Yes, that's You have to do that. And then I got another letter back from Banco Nacional, and they're like, that's great, but you're receiving stuff through PayPal. Why are you receiving stuff through PayPal? Well, our whole business runs through PayPal, right? That's the way we take money for my cosmetic company, Raw Botanicals, is a subscription plan through PayPal. It's the way we receive 90% of our payments. And I had to give them basically all my customers so they could contact my customers, make sure I'm not running drugs or whatever the heck they want to know. But it was expensive, and it took time. Not only my lawyer's time, my accountant's time, my personal time. I rounded up to somewhere around $1,000. This expense of doing this, and so it's not the idea of running the business here in Costa Rica. It's very expensive when it comes to that sort of stuff.
That's right, because it takes money and time.
Money and time. As long as you got it in spades, it's no problem. But I tell people, look, this is money and time that you are not going to have building your business, right? It's time suck that you're going to have doing legal stuff in Costa Rica, which makes it's a barrier for entry, which if you can be successful, you have fewer competitors because most people can't do it. Or what most people do is they'll run stuff under the table and just avoid all of this stuff, which is fine. You can do it at a small level. And that's what I sometimes recommend to people who are just doing really small stuff. I just say, look, man, just do it off the radar. But once you get to a certain size, you just can't. I mean, you just can't. You have a couple employees, you just can't do it, right? I mean, so at that point, so these people, they're going to get their books for their corporation. They're going to go to a bank to set up something. I always recommend the private banks. Back San Jose is usually the good one to go to, or Scotiabank. They're a little bit not easier, but at least their online stuff works a little bit better. But tell me, with that, so when they register a corporation, they're going to want to get the books from the lawyer, actually hold them themselves, right? They shouldn't leave those with the lawyer. Tell me your opinion.
That's very optional. I mean, that's very optional. Definitely, the owner has to keep the books, but many local firms have the service of having in custody the legal books. Why? Because perhaps, I mean, in your case, you live in Costa Rica permanently, but there are many other foreigners that are investing, doing business in Costa Rica, but they do not live here in Costa Rica, right? They're having other businesses, developing other business either in the region or in America or in Europe. So usually local firms keep in custody the books, okay?
Right.
But of course, there is a client attorney privilege. There is a relationship. There is a professional relationship between them. So there is binding rules that oblige the attorney to keep these books safe, number one, and not to make any other things. But it's very common. It's very common depending on the kind of client we're talking about. I mean, again, if you're living in Costa Rica, it's a good idea that you keep them, right? Because then, I don't know, something happens with the attorney or whatever, or it dies, or I don't know, whatever the reason. But if it's in a client that is traveling around, it's better to keep those books here in Costa Rica with the attorney. And you never know when you need to make a transaction in Costa Rica, and perhaps the client is not present in Costa Rica. So with a proxy letter, right, the attorney can make a shareholders general assembly to take decisions, right, and then how do you say, implement them, right, with the kind of contract they have to sign, right?
Right.
For example, I don't know, you're living right now, you are in vacation in Massachusetts, for example, and there is a big business that's taking place in San Jose. I got your legal books, so you send me a proxy letter to make this shareholder assembly in your behalf to sign
an agreement or whatever.
An agreement, a lease, a deed of buying a property, whatever, and I can do it on your behalf, right?
Sure.
So it's and because the legal books are here in Costa Rica, and that's very common. That's very common. Okay. What I would suggest for clients in this case with the legal books on the hands of attorneys is that to keep a copy of the books, and once in a while or every time that he comes to Costa Rica, they check the books, right? Period. I mean, it's something you have to do because having the books and not even knowing what's in them, it's difficult. I mean, it's not recommended at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's just for me. If you're a lot of people just have a corporation to hold kind of a property. For me, it's just, and you're not doing business kind of with that corporation. I would just, for security's sakes, from my own experience, even this experience a few weeks ago, keeping that, no matter how much you trust somebody, you know, it's always best to have it in hand, I think, just to prevent anything. I know there are other ways that actually lawyers have recommended to me to protect property from transfer. As far as, I don't know, putting loans or, you know, this sort of thing to prevent transfer of property. Actually, maybe you just want to walk us through one or two steps that you know of to, I mean, because a lot of people here, that's their main concern. And the things that have happened to the most people here is you get your property stolen from you, right? It's almost hard to believe that could even happen. But I mean, I know plenty of smart people like in Manuel Antonio, people who you would never think this could happen to, and it happened to. Mm-hmm. And these are people who've been here years, experienced, and, you know, their lawyer, who they completely trusted, took it away, and it got transferred a couple times, and they're fighting for years to try and get this thing back. So other than holding the books yourselves, do you know of other ways?
No, of course. I mean, if the property, if you're owning a property under your name, personal name, or under the company's name, right? There's a very simple way of doing that. The National Registry, it's, as I told you before, is a public registry, right? And it has a very simple website to use, right? Which is rnpdigital.com,
Registro Nacional. Just search Registro Nacional Costa Rica, and you get it.
You log in, right? You make a very simple account, and with the number of the property, you log in, right? And you can see the status of that property, right?
Right.
Particularly, who is the owner.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if it's under Adam McBride, your property, and you get in, I don't know, within the next 3 months, and you see Carlos Corrales, oh my God, my attorney just blew it, right?
Right.
Just robbed me or something, because
Trust
I didn't know
but verify.
That's right. So it's very simple. With that, the tool is very simple to be checking periodically. I mean, I wouldn't say every month. I would say every 6 months, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
There are other systems, and there are other marketing tools that people on the market that they sell you that, okay, I'm gonna look up for your property,
right?
And I'm gonna send you a report every 15 days or whatever, if there's a movement and so on. But I mean, it could be. It's depending on the client, but from my point of view and from my experience, my 20-year experience of being an attorney, I would say that you should check on your property, I don't know, every 3 or 6 months, you know?
Right.
Because you still have to be paying taxes, the municipality taxes, right? Territorial taxes. Yep. And you have to do that every 3 months. And obviously, the little invoice from the municipality is under your name, right?
Right.
If it was under another name, right? You wouldn't be getting these invoice collections from the municipality, right? So
walk me through the worst day of your life. You sign into the Registro Nacional, you look up your property, and it says Joe Smith. And what do you do? What do you do in that situation?
Well, obviously, you have to take legal steps against that. If you haven't sold your property whatsoever, you definitely have to file a criminal complaint in the Ministerio Público, the prosecutor's office, and he will issue a restraint order in that property, okay?
Okay.
There's going to be a little annotation on the side of the property which says, this property is being investigated, okay? And under criminal procedure, right?
Right.
So that's the very first thing you have to do. You have to move very quickly before. Sure. I mean, it's already it already is not yours, right?
Right.
You have to avoid at all costs that other person will sell it to another person or whatever. Right. I mean, you have to make an annotation on that property, right? Because then that third party, if sells the property to another party, right? The property,
that's where you get in real trouble, right?
The property will appear with an annotation that, hey, it's under criminal investigation. Okay, that's the very first thing to do. What happens later on? It's a big process. There's a big investigation. We got our Organismo de Investigación Judicial, OIJ, which we would say is the FBI of in America, right? That will make an investigation, of course, with differences, but it will make, it's a very good institution that will make the investigation to see what happened. As I told you before, all deeds or all transfers of property are done by a notary public. So the second thing to do is to see which document was registered, which notary do it, and who, and get the original copy. When that notebook, the protocolo, the official notebook of the notary public is finished, right? We have to change for another one. We have to deposit the protocolo in the Archivo Nacional, the National Archive, right? So that's where we get the copy of the original deed to see who signed it, who did it. What happened, right? That's the first thing you have to do. And then from there on, start the investigation. And if it has to be done, we have to, the police will have to go to their office or to their home to seize all kind of documents and see what's going on. And a criminal procedure will take place.
The key is to never let that happen, right? I mean, you just never want to go there because like that, if that happens, it's years. And I mean, I've heard the ones like one I heard in Manuel Antonio. It was like the crooked notary sold it to a dude, and then he sold it to another person, and then they sold it to a real person, and like, you know, then it's all downhill. Because once you get to that point where, you know, real people are involved who have been scammed, then you're in trouble, and you just want to avoid that at all costs. So,
no, definitely. Yeah. And the best way to do that is periodically be checking on your property, right? And that can happen with your vehicle.
What about the thing I heard one thing that was recommended from a lawyer years ago to me was to actually put a lien on the property. Basically you're putting up, where if I hold the corporate or the property in a corporation, I then put a loan, like I'm personally loaning the business or the land $1 million. And so in order to get that back, they have to pay off that loan to me, right? Something like that. Have you heard that sort of thing? I don't know. That was like that was one I heard a decade ago. I don't know if that's still a feasible thing to make it much more difficult for somebody to steal a piece of property.
Yes, it's possible. Yes, it's very possible to do that. I mean, those are mechanisms. It's going to cost you a little bit more money, right? Because you have to register that mortgage, that lien.
Exactly.
Right? It's going to cost you money. And that's a way of preventing or avoiding third parties to buy a property which has a lien. Yes, it convinced them not to buy, right? Or convince this thief of doing
Move on. It's easier
let's look for another property. Yeah, it could be possible. Yeah. It could be possible, right? But it depends very much on the person. I mean, I'd rather not. I mean, for me, it would be, I would prefer to be checking every 3 months on the property.
It's an unneeded expense.
That's right. But if you want to be more bulletproof type, you know, like a more paranoid type of person, yes, you can do that. Yes, you can do that, right? I mean, it's not an obligation. I wouldn't recommend it, but it is possible. And
it's possible.
If it makes you feel better, do it. Do it.
It's going to cost you money. It's all about the pura vida, man. You got to feel good.
You got to feel good, right? That's right. But no, you don't have to be pura vida with your properties.
No, I never pura vida.
Never pura vida, right?
No way, man. You got to be. For me, it's your big assets. You can't be pura vida with. You know, little stuff, fine. You know, you just let stuff go, but not with the big stuff. Not for me, anyway. But that's why, like the other day when I go, oh my God, you know, for me. You have those wake-up calls, and thankfully you have trustworthy lawyers, but still, you got to protect your own stuff.
Adam, the story that I told you of this carpenter in Florida, he bought a property in Tarcoles near Jaco for $50,000 in a piece of blank paper.
Yeah.
Right? What can he do? I mean, he could have, he returned to Florida. He
tail between your legs and you walk
very, disappointed, of course. He could have filed a criminal offense against this attorney, but he never did. I mean, he didn't have money. and nobody.
What are you going to do? You're going to spend $10,000 and maybe never even get it back anyway.
That's right. That's difficult. But he was how to say he should have been more responsible in that kind of things, right?
Yep.
But anyway, there are many mechanisms. If you said if those kind of things happens, immediately you have to find a criminal offense procedure.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yep. Man, hopefully that never happens.
No, me neither. Yeah.
Oh man. But actually, let's talk just a little bit more about, okay, I'm setting up a business. I'm coming down. I want to open a restaurant. I set up my corporation. I get a bank account through that corporation. So that's the easy way. If you're just moving down here, you don't have residency, you're just, you want to live in Costa Rica, you want to start a business, that's the way I recommend to people. That's the way you recommend to people to start a business. A lot of people, this is one of these gray areas in Costa Rica. When they set up this corporation to run this restaurant, there's a lot of fear around, can I work in the restaurant? Can I not work in the restaurant? Let's have the legal opinion, your opinion, and then we'll give the business owner's opinion on, can they work in that restaurant? So I'm Joe Smith. I open a restaurant in the beach at Jaco, a taco bar. And can I work there now? I'm not a legal resident, right? I'm just down here on my 90-day visa, but I have a corporation. What's the legal opinion? And then we'll give my opinion.
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, that's a very important question, point to talk about, definitely. And there are many things that we can talk about that issue. But let's start from the simpler, and we make more complex this situation, right? Okay, you open a restaurant. You're the manager, and you're an American. I believe you got 90 days to be in the country, but you are in a 90 days basis as a tourist, right?
Tourist, yep.
So the first thing you have to do in Costa Rica to work legally in your own restaurant is to file for residence as an investor here in Costa Rica. That takes a lot of time, and it could be perhaps another conference like this to talk about why residence takes so long. But the first thing you have to do is to apply for a residence as an investor in Costa Rica, okay? And to get, obviously, legal status of residence in the country, because as a tourist, you cannot do it, okay?
Right.
However, and that's where we start to make it a little bit more complex. If you're in a 90-day stay here in Costa Rica, perhaps you're not going to work in the restaurant full time. You're the manager. You come to see how things are doing, right? And you want to see the numbers. You want to say hello to the employees, and you want to say hello to the clients, and to see how the operation is going. Okay.
Right.
So in that sense, you can perhaps play a little bit with those 90 days and leave the country and then come back again. Right.
Right.
But if you are staying in a more permanent basis, and you're actually, I don't know, the main chef of the restaurant, or the main maitre d' of the restaurant, or I don't know, you have a very important role within the restaurant, and we're calling it a restaurant. It could be another kind of business.
Absolutely.
It applies exactly the same thing. If you're having a very important role in that business, it definitely is important for that residence to come up as soon as possible.
Right.
Although I have to say, and let's make a parenthesis, as soon as you file for that residence, in principle, you're not in a legal status of residency, right? But you're applying for it. And because the Costa Rican authorities take so long to rule in favor or not of your residence or against, right? You're like in a gray zone that you are legal in Costa Rica because you're filing and one more important thing, you are not depending or you're not taking jobs from other Costa Ricans or other residents. If you're owning a restaurant or a business, it is assumed that you got your own means to live in Costa Rica. So you are in a gray zone, but very favorable. Okay?
Right.
That's right. Okay? So, and you wait for your residence and you will be here.
Well, that's what I try to explain to people. Like, go ahead.
Sorry, just to finish the point. But the other thing that is very important is that if you're an employee of the restaurant, you have to be registered in the Caja Costarricense de Seguro Social, the Social Security in Costa Rica. And that's another big topic because the Seguridad Social in Costa Rica it's expensive.
Very expensive.
It's expensive, right? I mean, in the every monthly, it's almost 30% plus other taxes, but at the end, it's almost 50% annually.
That's right.
So it's a big expense. So if you're the manager, you're supposed to have a
manager salary, right?
A manager salary, that's right. And that's expensive, and you have to add costs, and that's something that it's very complex, either to understand and it's a cost of your business because not only you, the waiter, the waitress, the chefs, and the people involved, the security, they have to be in la caja, right? And that's another thing to be, but it has to be done. If you are living the dream in Costa Rica, and you're opening this big business in Costa Rica, and you're enjoying the pura vida life in Costa Rica, you have to be in rule with the caja, because otherwise you're gonna be in big trouble. Because the caja is looking for people that are not paying their dues every month, right?
Well, I tell people when they ask about, like, do I have to worry about immigration or the tax man, or what do I have to worry about in Costa Rica? I say, number one thing you have to worry about is the caja. Caja is, as far as I'm concerned, the most powerful entity in Costa Rica when it comes to affecting your business. And I've learned you run it completely straight with the caja, because it's not worth your time to do it any other way. If you can't afford it, you either need to just be out of your business or whatever. I mean, if you're going to try and run it and not have people on the caja and still have employees but not have them on the caja, forget it, man. I mean, if you can't run your business profitably with people on the caja,
do another thing.
Do another thing.
Do another thing.
Do another thing. The idea, there is a gray area, right? So the gray area, as far as I open a business, I have a corporation, I'm running the business. As long as you got your employees on the caja and that's running straight, and you've got your municipal permits, your health permits, and all that squared away. We haven't even gotten to that yet. But you have that all squared away, and you're there kind of overseeing it. That's gray, right? There's a gray area there, right? Which you want to be as hands-off as possible. You want to be as and it depends where you are. Are you in the center of San Jose, or are you kind of in the middle of nowhere? That's a different story, right? If you're in the middle of Naranjo, and you're running a small little soda, okay, it's different than if you are in the center of San Jose and you're running a small little soda. There's just different. There's going to be more interest in you in the center of San Jose than in the middle of nowhere.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Well, you're right there too. As I'm saying that, I'm like, wait a minute, because not necessarily. Because if you are in the middle of nowhere and you're the only guy in the middle of nowhere, your neighbors are all going to pay attention to you and what you're doing. Well, so you maybe want more your ducks in a row there.
You just talk about Naranjo, and I was in a hearing a year ago in Naranjo about a labor law case with the caja, right?
Yep.
So not necessarily if you're in downtown San Jose, you're going to be more exposed than if you're in Naranjo or in Manuel Antonio or Limon, right? And let me tell you something about it. Why is so strong La Caja? The Caja is the Social Security, but as well, the labor law in Costa Rica is very strong.
Yeah.
Okay, it's more in dubio pro operario. What does that mean? That in any doubt, right? If there is doubt,
employee wins.
It's going to go in favor of the employee. Okay,
sure.
So no matter what document as an employer you have signed with the employee, right?
Oh yeah.
If the truth is another thing, right? That paper counts 0.
Yeah.
Okay.
The paper. I tell people that the paper is literally. It doesn't matter what contract you get. Labor law wins. So no matter what you have written down or whatever, it literally means nothing. As far as a judge will make a decision, and if they make the decision, it's almost always going in the way of the employee anyway.
That's right, because the employee is considered the weakest part of the relationship. Okay,
Right.
the employer, of course, has the money, has the means, and everything.
Those rich capitalists stealing stealing from the poor employees.
That's right. And Costa Rica has very strong labor laws, right?
Yep.
So, the first labor law was enacted in the 1940s, right?
Yep.
There was a big movement, and the caja, the social security system is also from the 40s, because in that decade a lot of exploitation was taking place, right? So the Costa Rican government, in good, not only good faith, but in a good sense,
to protect
right?
people.
They protect people, and that's reasonable.
That's right.
But they have been enforcing more these labor laws in a very strong way, right?
Sure.
So that makes a little bit, good for the employees, right? I was once an employee, and I felt very protected in the system.
Oh, yeah.
Of course. But as an employer that I am right now, it's very tough. It's very tough to have a business, and you have to be paying on time monthly those bills, and that's expensive. So moving along, yes, the business, you have to be on the right track with the caja and with the labor laws, definitely.
Yeah.
Besides that, there are other things, the municipality permits, and depending on the project, perhaps environmental permits and so on.
Oh, my God.
That's very bureaucratic. But
Kill me now, man. Kill me now.
That's very bureaucratic, and things have to be done, definitely. But that's the way it is in Costa Rica. You have to deal a little bit with it.
I'll tell you, it's better now, because when we set up our first lab in Capos, 12 years ago, 14 years ago, it was like a complete nightmare. I tell the story all the time about the Ministerio Salud, and it took 6 months to get him down there, to come inspect it and give me and it's better now. We just got our lab and shop in Pavas done. It took a month and a half almost. It cost me about $1,000 to get it done, because I had to pay somebody, who knew what they were really doing to really get it done. And plus all the fees and all that sort of, but it got done, a month and a half actually is really, really slow, but I've had the experience of 6 months. So this is like really fast for me. But it was, there's no way. People need to know there was no way I was doing it myself. Like, if I'm a foreigner and I barely know how to speak Spanish, you can forget it. Like, to try and do it, you're going to drive yourself crazy, right? That's the point where you have to have somebody in the know, right? And I think when I was about to do it, I think I reached out to you. I reached out to my other lawyers. Who do you know? Who do you know? Because I know this guy doesn't know how to do this. So who do you know in San Jose, in Pavas, who knows the people to go and check all those boxes, right? And so what do you do? Other than do what I do you have any other advice to just reach out to people in that area, wherever you are, to try and find out who you know or who people have used in the past? Like, what's your advice on that?
Well, number one, be patient. But otherwise, the best thing to do is to have a good team, right, working on those permits. The best way of doing those of getting those permits is having being patient, having a good team working for you that will call the authorities, I don't know, once a week, every day, but always with a very nice big smile on your face and saying good morning to the person on the other side of the line, right?
Yeah.
Because if you go there and stop tapping on the table, that's right, you are not getting anything, right?
Never, man.
And that's nothing that makes me proud of course.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a reality, and we have to deal with it, right? You have to be very, last week I was with a client, and he told me, no, Carlos, I think you should go to that hearing because I don't have a nice smile as you. and at the end, yes, it's part of it. People like public authorities like to be treated well. I'm not saying respectfully, because they have their own limitations. It's not them personally. It's the bureaucracy overall that makes the system slower, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if every project in Costa Rica needs an environmental permit, and many projects are taking place, right? It is difficult. Perhaps we don't have the office does not have the resources, the human resources or the economic resources
Sure.
to have more people. So
Yep.
I mean, so what can you do? Be patient,
Yep.
right?
You get in
Yes,
line.
you
Yeah.
can insist a little bit. You can be nice to the people, right? And you will be in grace with them, and they will try to make an effort. But
Yep.
it's not. But if you are not interested at all, right? Nothing will happen, and it will be delayed, right?
Oh yeah.
Of
Yep.
course, things have to be done, and I believe public authorities, government authorities, have it very clearly that for environmental permits, they'll have to modify the law to establish which projects will be needing this environmental permit or which other projects do not. I'll give you an example. If there is a bridge of 1 lane, for example, the bridge already exists, right?
Right.
It already exists. Why should, if we're making bigger to 2 lanes the bridge, right? Why should we be getting an environmental impact permit for expanding the bridge to 2 lanes if
Right.
if the bridge
It
already
already
exists,
exists, right?
right?
Exactly,
So
right.
in what way would be affecting the environmental?
Right.
If there is a new project from zero, okay, yes, but if there already exists, or I mean, it's just an example, but those kind of
Sure.
things have to take place.
Yep.
In the past, opening a new business took a long time. I believe, and I strongly believe that it has improving a lot.
Oh, it's improving.
It has
for
improving
sure.
a
For
lot.
sure. Yeah. For
Definitely. And it depends
I
if
think-
you
I
are
think even-
establishing in a free zone, things are going to
Yep.
be faster because the free zone is already established with the permits and so on. If you are
Yep.
starting a new project in the middle of the jungle of Manuel Antonio, yes, it's going to take longer, definitely, but things
Yep.
can be done. And once things are done, you can start enjoying your pura vida life in Costa Rica. It's nice to live in Costa Rica.
It is. I think, we everybody gives it crap all the time about Costa Rica and how hard it is, but this is everywhere in the world. This is no country escapes bureaucracy, and I think Costa Rica is making an attempt to make it better and more streamlined. They're stuck with bureaucracies trying to make themselves streamlined. Good luck. I mean, that's every government in the world. The key is you have to have, like you said, people on your team or whatever. Even if you're just like a person and you're just going to open a small business, a restaurant or something like this, just ask around, talk to people. What's the best way to do it? People might say, oh, look, just run it for 6 months as is, and they'll come to you and they'll help, once they come to you. I mean, I've had people tell me that too. The municipality will show up and be like, where's your permit? And you're like, I don't know. Where is it? And they'll actually, then they're motivated to get it done. Like I've had people do that. But you got to know locally what's going on in your kind of area. And that's just local knowledge. I mean, you just have to know, you have to talk to people and find out.
And there's something that you're saying about knowing the people that knows how to run things. I mean, regarding legal things, legal matters, the attorney has to be very business oriented. Many attorneys in Costa Rica seen on the way that they are like Mr. Nose. Oh, no, you cannot do that. Oh, no, you cannot do that. Oh, no, that's impossible. No, I mean, I believe that attorneys should be more like teammates and have to be very business oriented. Okay, you cannot do this, but let's see if we can do it this other way, or definitely don't do it, but let's seek for help another way or something else, right? Or,
exactly.
Okay, you cannot do it, but if you do it, you can defend yourself in this way or another. You want to take the chance? Yes or no? You see? But it has to be business oriented. The legal advice has to be very business oriented, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, they're always with law, as I know, it's a whole bunch of gray areas, right? And so it's just where you're comfortable. Money is a big issue, and how you're going to proceed based on your financing for your business and stuff like that. You just have to take it all into account somehow, all these pieces, and just go with your gut as to what you think's kind of right, and try to do it the best way possible. But obviously, understanding you have to get it done. in some way. I tell the story about when we remodeled our lab in Capos, and we tried for like 3 solid months to get the municipal permit to do a remodel. And at the end of the day, we just closed the doors and just did the remodel, right? Because, you know, how long was I going to wait? I had to open the business, right? It was like if I didn't open the business was going to be closed anyway because I'm paying rent. I'm going to be bankrupt anyway. That's right. You know, I had to make a judgment call, and we did it, and we opened the doors. And then I tell people, like, the fine was like $50 for not having a permit, you know, and I'd spent like $1,000 on my lawyer trying to get the permit, you know, and it was like, that was a live and learn moment for me, where certainly when it came to construction, I've learned for small construction projects and stuff, it's better just to, what do they say? Ask for forgiveness and not permission, right? So certain things you need to learn, and there's no way to learn other than to go through it or to talk to people and find out, right? And so you have to have these connections with people. If you're coming down from scratch and you think you're just going to walk in and do something without any local knowledge, you are going to get abused. You're going to be one of these stories you hear on Facebook where people just get worked over and can't understand how they got abused in Costa Rica. And it's like, well, you didn't learn first what to do. And any bad experience I've had in Costa Rica, it's from my own lack of understanding about what was the proper way to proceed, right? And just not investigating enough, not talking to enough people, and not getting the input I needed to actually make a correct decision.
And that's another piece of advice I would like to say. It's that for foreigners investing in Costa Rica or trying to live in Costa Rica, never compare Costa Rica from your homelands. Because in America, in Europe, I don't know, things are done differently, right?
Yep.
And sometimes we think that everything is done the same way as in your home countries. And it's not like that. Unfortunately, it's not like that, right?
No. Absolutely.
And I believe it will happen to me if I invest in another country. I mean,
absolutely.
Things are going to be completely different. And that's a piece of advice. You have to learn the local ways of doing things.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, that's part of the challenge about Costa Rica moving down here in general, is you have to learn a new way to do absolutely everything. You know, there's a way to get your driver's license that's different from the States. The one in the States still sucks. The one in Costa Rica kind of sucks too. They both suck. And yet they're completely different, right? So you have to learn these new ways. I mean, and that's the challenge and could be the fun of moving to Costa Rica, is like you're just experiencing new stuff, new ways of doing everything, which is the challenge, the interesting thing. It's new, exciting, but it can be absolutely frustrating, especially if you expect it to go smooth. Yes. Carlos, man, thank you so much. This is awesome info. I don't want to hold you too much longer. We've gone way over an hour here.
Wow, already,
man, it flies by, right?
Definitely. No, I have enjoyed it, and I believe that there are many other topics that we can talk about in the future. So get me in. I'm of course, man. Put me on the list.
I have a feeling you're going to be a regular, my friend.
Well, thank you very much. It will be my pleasure, Adam.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Carlos, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
Very welcome. Thank you.